Chapter 50 Sword of Promised Victory Excalibur appears. Everyone's power greatly increases. Now let's see what our grand prize is, I said to the group. Everyone was excited. After all, the previous two rewards had come from relatively weak demons and yokai. The reward from the extraordinary Yamada no Orochi was sure to be amazing. With that thought, everyone looked at the card in my hand, eager to see what it contained. I crushed the card. A blinding, golden light erupted, shooting up into the sky like a pillar of pure energy. Shock. Awe. What's happening? Wait, that sword, could it be? How is that possible? That sword disappeared long ago. It shouldn't be here. Rias, who had been relatively calm, suddenly widened her eyes, recognizing the identity of the sword. But that only served to increase her shock. Looking at the holy aura emanating from the weapon, I was dumbfounded, because that holy sword, radiating divine light, was none other than Excalibur, the sword of promised victory. This particular Excalibur was a divine construct created by the planet itself, not by humans. Unlike the famous alchemically created Excalibur of a certain king, this sword was crystallized from the faith of humanity, forged within the planet as a weapon to protect the Earth. It was an ultimate weapon, an anti-planet, noble phantasm. Was my luck finally turning around? Ha ha ha! I knew it today is my lucky day. I was ecstatic. Amazing. The others, witnessing this scene, were completely stunned. Then, Rias quickly turned to Kiba and started to explain, Kiba, this holy sword is different from the ones created by humans. But before Rias could finish, Kiba interrupted her, his expression complex. Bucho, I know what you want to say. Don't worry. I understand the significance of this sword. Don't worry about me. I'm just a little shocked to see this legendary blade. After all, who wouldn't be shocked? The legendary sword of the planet, appearing before them in such a manner, was unbelievable. Under their bewildered gazes, a golden light appeared in my hand, and the sword of promised victory slowly descended from the sky until I grasped it. The moment I held the sword of promised victory, I felt my blood surge, as if an infinite power was coursing through my veins. At the same time, Rias and the others approached me, their shock evident. Kyoya, this is... I glanced at them and joked. Now that I'm the master of the sword of the planet, does that mean I'm the reincarnation of King Arthur in my past life? Hearing my words, the girls actually started to think about it seriously. Seeing their reactions, I quickly said, Hey, I was just kidding. Don't take it seriously. But they seemed to have genuinely considered it a possibility. I was speechless. I decided not to explain any further and let them believe what they wanted. But in the end, after discussing it with the others, I made a decision that would ensure our victory. Then, in the next second, we were suddenly back in the hyperbolic time chamber. Back in the chamber, everyone felt the oppressive atmosphere once again. Kyome, who had been training, looked at us curiously. How was it? Was the dungeon party fun? Did you get any rewards? So, we recounted our experiences in the other dimension to her in detail. Hearing about our thrilling adventure and the horrifying power of Yamada no Orochi, Kyome was filled with envy and regret. Seeing Kyome's dejected expression, I grasped her hand and gently kissed her cheek. What's wrong, Kyome? Are you upset that I didn't take you? Don't worry, there will be other opportunities in the future. I'll take you with me next time, okay? My sudden intimate gesture made Kyome blush, and she stammered, not knowing what to say. Rias and the others just watched them with strange expressions, but they didn't say anything. All right, everyone, let's continue training. We need to make the most of this time before the raiding game. I encouraged the group. Hearing my words, Rias and the others were re-energized. After all, in just one day, their power had increased dramatically. And so, the group resumed their hellish training. 2 days passed in the outside world, and the training inside the hyperbolic time chamber was finally complete. Rias had now fully mastered the use of her power of destruction, and her power level had stabilized at the pinnacle of the high-class level thanks to the enhancement. Kaniko's martial arts and Kaion's magical beasts had also improved significantly. Akeno and Kiba had both reached the mid-level of high class. Kiba had suffered the most during these 2 years. Being the only guy, I had been particularly hard on him during training. I had even summoned lightning from the sky to encourage him to train harder. For 2 years, he had trained almost every day until he was bruised and battered, lying on the ground, unable to move. It was a sight that made everyone feel sorry for him. Kyoya, I feel like I could easily defeat Riser now with my current power, Rias said, feeling the unprecedented power within her. It seems Rias is full of confidence, but I won't fall behind, either. Akeno said excitedly. All right. Even though only 2 days have passed in the outside world, you've all been training for nearly 2 years. You must be under a lot of pressure. So, let's relax for the remaining 5 days. I suggested. Here are my suggestion. Everyone cheered up. They had been training non-stop, and they were eager to relax. Chapter 51, the rating game begins. Support and read 17 advanced chapters on my Patreon. Bonus chapter for hitting 400 PS. Thank you all so much for your support. After 2 years of training in the hyperbolic time chamber, we returned to the real world and, at my suggestion, spent the next 5 days relaxing and having fun. A week later, Rias, her peerage, and I waited in the Occult Research Club for the representatives from the underworld to arrive. To our surprise, the girls from the student council were also there, saying they had come to cheer us on. But it was obvious that they were also there because they missed me. Sona had initially been reluctant to bring her peerage to watch the match at the Occult Research Club, since the student council had access to a magical live broadcast. However, she ultimately gave in to their persistent pleading. Rias, I hear that you and your peerage have been relaxing and enjoying yourselves these past few days, rather than training. Have you given up? But you're not that kind of person. So, does this mean you're confident you can defeat Riser Phoenix now? Sona looked at everyone's confident expressions and shared her thoughts based on her observations. But what Sona couldn't understand was how Rias and her peerage could have changed so drastically in just 2 days. That's right, Sona. That's exactly what I'm thinking. I now have the power to utterly defeat Riser. This match will be the perfect end to this engagement. Rias clasped her hands together, her eyes filled with anticipation, looking completely in control as she responded to Sona. That's the spirit. It's time to roast that turkey and make him eat his arrogance, Kaiom said, already imagining herself dominating the rating game. Don't forget about the rest of us, Kaiom-chan. We can't let you have all the fun, Akeno added confidently. Kiba simply smiled and remained silent. After all, I had trained him relentlessly, but through those 2 years of intense training, he had completely transformed. This time, I will definitely help Rias Bucho break free from her shackles, Kaneko said, clenching her small fist. Rias gently patted Kaneko's head. She knew that Kaneko had trained the hardest, and she was especially grateful for her dedication. The student council members couldn't help but feel curious after hearing Rias and her peerage's confident declarations. They wondered what they had experienced in the past few days. Just as everyone was waiting, a familiar red magic circle appeared in the room. Riser and Ravel Phoenix emerged. Following them was Evelyn, Surzex's queen. Seeing everyone gathered, Evelyn curtsied gracefully and said, "Good evening, Rias-sama, Sona-sama, and Riser-sama." The others returned her greeting. Riser then turned to Rias, a provocative smirk on his face. "Rias, the week is up. Are you ready to face defeat?" Rias simply gave him a cold look. "You'll be the one tasting defeat, Riser. I wonder if you'll still be so smug after I beat you. I hope you don't fall apart completely." Seeing Rias's calm demeanor, Riser was stunned. Why? Why is she so calm? Doesn't she understand the difference in our power? Rias, you haven't even gathered all your peerage members. You only have 5. I have a full set of 15. I think you're underestimating the gap between us. Riser felt slighted and reminded Rias of the difference in their forces. Numbers don't mean everything. You'd better prepare yourself for a crushing defeat. What? You? Riser's face darkened instantly, anger burning in his eyes. "I'd like to see what this human has taught you that gives you the confidence to talk so big." "Ria-sama, Riser-sama, are you ready? The rating game is about to begin." Just then, Evelyn interrupted their argument. "I'm ready. We can start anytime," Ria said confidently. "I'm ready too. Let's begin," Riser said, calming himself down. Despite Rias's strange behavior, he had the advantage of being immortal. He was confident that no matter how much Rias and her peerage had improved, they couldn't possibly defeat him. Riser was supremely confident in his victory. Soon, Rias and her peerage, along with Riser and his, were transported to an alternate dimension, the designated battlefield for raiding games, developed by Ajuka Beelzebub after he created the evil pieces. This space was designed to prevent serious injuries during raiding games. If a participant was seriously injured, they would be automatically teleported out for treatment. It was virtually impossible to die in this space unless the power difference was too great. As the raiding game commenced, a live broadcast was sent to various locations throughout the underworld. Many factions within the three great powers were also watching the match. Among them were the two heavenly dragons, Valley and Lux, and the hero faction's Chow Chow. They knew that I was backing Rias, and they wanted to use this match to confirm their suspicions. Back in the Occult Research Club, a magical broadcast was also being displayed. Kyoya was flirting with the girls, seemingly unconcerned about Rias' situation. Sona, seeing this, pushed up her glasses and said, with a hint of exasperation, "The raiding game is about to start. Aren't you worried at all?" "Don't worry, Sona. Rias and the others won't lose. Their power will definitely surprise you," I said, embracing a stiff Tsubaki. She was still so innocent and easily flustered. Hearing my confident declaration, Sona couldn't help but wonder why I was so sure of Rias's victory. After all, Riser had almost never lost a raiding game. As Sona was considering whether or not to ask me about it, the raiding game officially began. I lay back on the sofa, resting my head on my girlfriend's laps, seemingly able to see through Sona's doubts. Kyoya smiled faintly and said, I know you're curious about what Rias and the others have been through, Sona. You'll see soon enough. But I guarantee this match will send shockwaves throughout the three factions. Will it really be that dramatic? Sona thought to herself, then turned her attention to the magical broadcast. On the other side, Rias and Riser's teams appeared in the alternate dimension. The location for this match is this city, Kuo Town. Rias and Riser will each occupy one side. The participants for this match are as follows. Rias Grimory and her peerage. Queen, Akeno Himejima. Knight, Kiba Yudo. Rook, Kaneko Tuju. Pawn, Kyomabe. Riser Phoenix and his peerage. Queen, Yubaluna. Knights, Carlamine Cirrus. Rooks, Shualon, Isabella. Bishop, Ravel Phoenix, Mai. Pawns, Marion, Bulant, Mira, and I, and Lee, Sharia, and Isle and Nell. The rules for this raiding game are as follows. Unlimited combat. Any weapon and any method may be used. The match ends when one side's king is defeated or surrenders. The defeated king will be instantly transported out of the alternate dimension. Now, I declare the raiding game officially started. As Evelyn's solemn voice echoed throughout the space, the raiding game officially began. Unlimited combat meant that this raiding game was a direct contest of strength between the two sides. Chapter 52, Kyomabe and Kiba Yudo bare their fangs. Rias and her peerage were gathered, discussing their strategy for the upcoming raiding game. Bucho, what's there to discuss? With our current strength, we don't need any tactics. We could just steamroll them. Kyome, now brimming with confidence, suggested straightforwardly. Kyome-chan has a point. Rias, let's just face them head on. That way, no one can accuse you of trying to weasel out of the engagement. Akeno agreed, a playful glint in her eyes. All right, if that's what everyone wants, let's show them what we're made of. Rias smiled and nodded, giving her approval. Understood. The group exchanged excited glances, their battle instincts kicking in. They were eager to unleash their newfound power on Riser's team. Without further ado, they charged towards Riser's designated starting point. Those watching from the stands couldn't help but shake their heads at Rias's team's reckless charge. They were clearly outnumbered and outmatched. Now, they had even exposed their position. If Riser's team surrounded them. Meanwhile, Riser was contemplating Rias's possible tactics when he suddenly sensed 5 distinct surges of magic power rushing towards him. His confident smirk faltered, replaced by a grimace. He realized that Rias was planning a direct confrontation. Rias, so you want to play it this way? Fine, I'll indulge you. Riser sneered, feeling a surge of annoyance. He issued his orders for a head-on clash. He wasn't afraid of a direct fight, especially not against Rias and her ragtag group. He'd crush them, and Rias would have no choice but to accept her fate. Moments later, the two teams clashed near a park. Riser immediately taunted. Rias, I don't know what you're planning, but since you choose to face me head-on, you must be prepared to lose. We'll see who's the loser in the end. Rias retorted coldly. Is that so? Then go. Show them their place. Riser roared, waving his hand dismissively. Instantly, one of Riser's knights and 2 pawns charged towards Kiba, surrounding her. But Kiba simply scoffed. Only 3 of you to fight me? You underestimate the future greatest beast tamer. Just a low-class brat talking big. The female knight sneered. Then, the 3 rushed at Kiba, intending to overwhelm her with a swift attack. But Kiba just watched them approach with amusement, then waved her hand. Her 3 magical beasts materialized beside her, the Emerald Leviathan, the silvery white magic tiger, and the 3-eyed golden wolf. What the? That's impossible. The 3 girls charging at Kiba froze in their tracks, their eyes wide with disbelief as they stared at the beasts. Make them disappear? How dare they underestimate us? Kiba commanded her magical beasts. Hearing Kiba's order, the beasts charged. The Leviathan opened its maw and unleashed a torrent of noxious fumes at one of the pawns. The pawn, engulfed in the poisonous mist, turned green and collapsed, dissolving into particles of light. The other pawn was struck by a blast of energy from the magic tiger and also fell, unconscious and eliminated. The knight fared even worse. The 3-eyed golden wolf, enraged by her earlier taunt, lunged at her, its jaws snapping shut around her torso, tearing through her armor and flesh. Blood splattered as the knight was ripped apart, her body dissolving into particles. The spectators were stunned. They hadn't expected such power from a low-class devil. The 3-eyed golden wolf, in particular, was clearly at least high-class level. Meanwhile, Kiba, facing a similar situation, is surrounded by 1 knight and 4 pawns. But Kiba remained unfazed. With a surge of magic power, he summoned a demonic sword out of thin air, gripping it tightly as he faced his 5 opponents. Seeing Kiba facing them alone, the female knight sneered. You think you can take on all 5 of us by yourself? How laughable. Prepare to be eliminated. Eliminated? That will be you, Kiba said confidently, a faint smile playing on his lips. In the next second, boom, Kiba vanished from his spot, reappearing instantly before the female knight. With a swift, almost imperceptible movement, he slashed, bisecting her katana, sending the broken blade and the knight herself flying backward. How is he so fast? The female knight stared in disbelief at her severed katana. They were both knights, both specializing in swordsmanship and speed. But Kiba's speed was so fast that she couldn't even see his movements. And as a swordsman, how could he possess such monstrous strength? The 4 pawn girls watched in horror, unable to react to Kiba's speed. Before they could even process what had happened, Kiba attacked again. He moved like a phantom. Kiba's speed was now beyond the limits of their perception. With a swift thrust, his sword pierced through the knight, who fell to her knees, a look of terror on her face as she dissolved into particles of light. The remaining 4 pawns, horrified, exchanged glances. Then, they decided to attack Kiba together, hoping to overwhelm him with numbers. But their hopes were quickly dashed. Wielding his demonic sword effortlessly, Kiba casually swung his blade. A pawn girl fell, sliced in half. In the next moment, Kiba unleashed a flurry of swift slashes, each strike eliminating another pawn. In just 4 or 5 seconds, the 5 girls were all defeated, eliminated by Kiba's overwhelming speed and swordsmanship. In the hyperbolic time chamber, Kiba had trained under 10 times Earth's gravity, honing his body and swordsmanship to their limits. He had endured Kyoya's relentless training, pushing himself beyond his limits every day. Now, with the gravity returned to normal, he felt incredibly light and agile, as if he could fly. With his current high-class power, these low-class pawns and knights were no match for him. Kiba sheathed his demonic sword, returning to Rias's side with a smile. "Bucho, task complete. I have eliminated them all. Thank you, Kiba. Well done. Now, let's just sit back and enjoy Keno and Akeno's performances." Rias replied, smiling faintly. Riser, watching Kiba's display, was dumbfounded. He was not just shocked. Rias had confidently declared that Kiba would only be observing the rest of the battle and not participating further. The spectators watching the magical broadcast were equally astonished. Ignoring the numerical disadvantage, the power levels displayed by Rias's peerage members were completely unexpected. As devils from prominent families, Rias and Riser's peerage members were well known throughout the underworld. Everyone knew their relative strengths and weaknesses, but no one had anticipated that Kiba, who had been considered to be strong but not exceptional, would suddenly become so powerful in just a week. His current strength was almost comparable to Riser himself. Initially, no one believed Rias had any chance of winning. However, with Kyome's formidable magical beasts and Kiba's incredible strength, people were beginning to wonder whether Rias might actually pull off a victory in this raiding game. After all, Rias's queen and rook hadn't even shown their full power yet. Based on what they had seen so far, their strength must be extraordinary as well. Meanwhile, in the Occult Research Club, Sona Citri, watching the broadcast intently, glanced down at Kyoya, who was still resting his head on her lap, a strange look in her eyes. Even though Kyoya had mentioned that Rias and her peerage had improved significantly, Sona hadn't been prepared for this level of improvement. Abe Kyome and Kiba Yudo's power surge was beyond anything she had anticipated. "Is this what you meant by a small improvement?" Sona wanted to ask Kyoya, but decided against it, planning to question him more thoroughly later. Now, she was even more curious about Rias and Akeno's power levels. Back in the alternate dimension, Riser, seeing so many of his peerage members eliminated, his face darkened with rage. He roared at his remaining members, ordering them to focus on eliminating Rias's remaining pieces. There's no way all of Rias's peerage members are that ridiculously strong. Take out a rook first. Eliminate Kaneko Tuju. Hearing Riser's order, the remaining 2 rook girls and 1 pawn girl charged towards Kaneko, surrounding her. Ravel Phoenix also joined them. But even facing 4 opponents, Kaneko's expression remained calm and fearless. Her eyes were cold as she stared at them. Seeing Kaneko's cold stare, Ravel felt a sudden chill. She spoke hesitantly, her voice trembling slightly. Hello. Actually, I'm just a figurehead. I don't intend to fight. I'm just here to watch. And I'm not very good at fighting anyway. So please, just ignore me." Chapter 53, Keno and Akeno take action, shocking everyone. Just stay back and don't interfere. Kaneko's gaze softened slightly as she looked at Ravel. "Kaneko Tuju, this is an order from Riser-sama. You should surrender now," one of the rook girls said coldly, her tone incredibly arrogant. Suddenly, she lunged at Kaneko, throwing a punch without any warning. It was a straightforward attack, relying solely on brute force. But to everyone's surprise, Kaneko didn't even try to dodge. Instead, she swiftly moved her body and met the rook's attack with an open hand strike. A loud bang echoed through the area, followed by the rook's pained scream, shattering the silence. Kaneko's hand had brutally broken the rook's arm, sending her flying backward, coughing up blood. "Hey, Chow, Wasn't Kaneko Tuju only a weak mid-class? Everyone was shocked. According to their intelligence, Kaneko was supposed to be one of the weakest members of Rias's peerage. That's why they had sent a mid-class devil to deal with her, to secure an easy victory for Riser. But Kaneko's performance so far suggested that she was another unknown variable. Kaneko turned, her gaze cold as she scanned the remaining three. Her overwhelming aura made them shudder. "Come at me together. Don't waste my time," Kaneko said calmly, staring at them. The injured rook slowly backed away, shouting, "You two, help me take her down." "All right, let's go." The three girls charged at Kaneko together, forming a triangle formation. But despite facing a three-pronged attack, Rias and the others remained calm, as if they weren't worried at all. Tekai, Iron Body. Kaneko activated the technique, her magic power surging suddenly. She braced herself to take the three girls' attacks head-on. When their attacks landed, they felt as if they had struck a solid steel wall. All their force rebounded back at them, causing their hands to throb with pain. They stared at Kaneko in disbelief. "So weak," Kaneko muttered. Second gate. Gate of healing open. Kaneko's form vanished, the ground beneath her cracking from the force of her movement. In the next instant, she appeared before the injured rook. Shurgan, finger pistol. Kaneko's fingers hardened, and she rapidly jabbed at the rook, piercing through her body like bullets. She was careful to avoid any vital points, but the rook was riddled with holes, blood gushing out, before she collapsed, dissolving into particles and being teleported out of the game. Then, Kaneko moved like a wisp of smoke, weaving between the two remaining girls, her fists a blur as she struck them repeatedly. They were sent flying and were ultimately eliminated. Seeing his peerage members, except for his queen and his sister, all eliminated, Riser found it difficult to accept. Why is this happening? How can Rias's peerage be so strong? Not only was Kiba, a knight, stronger than his rooks, but even Kaneko, a rook, had horrifying strength and speed that far exceeded expectations. Are they all monsters? Of course, Riser wasn't the only one shocked. The devils watching the broadcast from the underworld were also astonished. When did Rias's peerage become so? In the viewing stands, Mouse Surzex was also surprised by the turn of events, but more than that, he was confused. As Rias's older brother, he knew about Kaneko's recruitment. He was well aware of her previous power level, but from Kaneko's performance, she had at least reached the level of a peak mid-class. And that instantaneous burst of power earlier was not at all inferior to a high class. And this had happened in just 7 days. The situation was simply astounding. But this improvement must be the work of that human Rias found, the one named Kaoya Hibari, right? Surzex murmured, a faint smile on his lips. As a doting younger sister complex, Mount Surzex obviously cared deeply for his sister, so when he heard that Rias had a human boyfriend, he had already heard about it from his wife, Evelyn. He had also learned from Evelyn that Kaoya had helped Rias in her peerage train for a week. Now, seeing Rias's peerage with such drastically improved power, it was clear that her human boyfriend was extraordinary. Now, it was certain that his sister could annul this political marriage once and for all. It seemed this rating game was going to be far more interesting than anyone had anticipated. At the same time, Surzex's curiosity about Kaoya, the instigator of all this, intensified. He was eager to meet this remarkable young man. Meanwhile, back on the battlefield, Kaneko was staring at Ravel, who was now visibly frightened and taking a few steps back. Seeing Ravel's fear, Kaneko softened her tone slightly. "You don't have to worry. Kaoya-senpai told me that you're different from your brother. You're kind and not good at fighting, so I won't attack you. But you have to stay put and not run around." Okay, I understand. Thank you for sparing me." Hearing Kaneko's words, Ravel remembered Kaoya and blushed slightly as she thanked her. Seeing Ravel's shy demeanor, Kaneko couldn't help but think to herself, is she trying to seduce him? Well, he did tell me to spare her. Pervert Kaoya-senpai. What the hell is going on? Their strength is completely different from the intel. Riser's queen, Yubaluna, nicknamed the Bomb Queen, was furious. Initially, After seeing Keno and Kiba's power, Yubaluna had not dared to underestimate Kaneko. She had planned to team up with her comrades to take Kaneko out first, but Akeno had intercepted her, preventing her from doing so. Furious, Yubaluna was forced to focus on Akeno. It seems everyone else has finished their fights. I guess it's our turn now, Akeno said, smiling at Yubaluna. Let's fight, shall we? I need to finish Akeno quickly, or else Riser-sama will be in danger. We might actually lose. Yubaluna decided on her strategy and summoned a magic circle in the sky. Countless magic bombs rained down on Akeno, but Akeno remained unfazed. With a wave of her hand, she summoned an equally large number of lightning bolts that intercepted and destroyed the magic bombs. That was a bit weak. Since you didn't take the chance I gave you, don't blame me for what happens next. Here I come. Akeno smiled playfully. Suddenly, Akeno shot into the sky, surrounded by crackling electricity. In an instant, a giant, draconic form of lightning formed behind her, lunging towards Yubaluna. Yubaluna, seeing this, tried to dodge, but the lightning dragon seemed to have a life of its own, changing direction and striking her before she could react. Boom, boom, boom. The battlefield echoed with the sound of thunder. Yubaluna, charred black, plummeted from the sky. She stared at her battered body in disbelief. I was defeated in one hit. I'm a high-class devil. How can I be this weak? No. Akeno must have used her strongest attack. She can't use it again, and I still have a trump card. As Riser's queen, Yubaluna naturally possessed a Phoenix Tear, giving her the ability to revive once with full health. So, she immediately used the precious Phoenix Tear and was restored to her peak condition. Hee, I knew you'd have a Phoenix Tear. Akeno's voice rang out, a teasing smile on her face. But that doesn't change the fact that you'll lose. Lightning Prison. As Akeno spoke, countless bolts of lightning swirled around them, forming a cage that trapped Yubaluna within it in the blink of an eye. Yubaluna, who had been planning to create a magic barrier, was confused by Akeno's actions. Why isn't she attacking me? Why is she trapping me? Just as Yubaluna was trying to figure out how to break free from the cage, Akeno raised her hand, her eyes flashing with intensity. Wrath of the Thunder God. The sky above them turned dark and thunder roared. Countless bolts of lightning descended from the storm clouds, striking Yubaluna. This isn't over yet. Ice Meteor. Akeno's hair suddenly turned ice blue, and the temperature around them plummeted. Then, a massive iceberg, like a meteor from space, crashed down towards the trapped Yubaluna. Yubaluna's face was filled with terror. Trapped and unable to escape, she could only watch helplessly as the lightning and the iceberg closed in on her. Yeah! With no way to resist, Yubaluna was first struck by the lightning, then crushed by the iceberg. Her screams echoed through the air before she was silenced, dissolving into particles of light and disappearing from the raiding game. With this, Rias's team had suffered no losses, while Riser's team was completely wiped out, except for Ravel, who was merely a spectator. Chapter 54, The Dragon and the Holy Sword. Meanwhile, in the audience seating area, everyone's eyes were wide with disbelief. They had witnessed countless raiding games over the years, both large and small, but what they had just seen completely defied their understanding of the world. Initially, both in terms of numbers and power, Rias's team was considered to be at a disadvantage, vastly inferior to Riser's peerage. Almost every devil watching from the underworld had anticipated a one-sided victory for Riser, but to their astonishment, Rias's team had crushed Riser's team without breaking a sweat. It was a turn of events no one had predicted. Kiba and Kaneko's performances were shocking enough, but Akeno, the priestess of thunder, had displayed even more astonishing power, utterly dominating and defeating Riser's queen with contemptuous ease. The level of control Akeno demonstrated over her lightning was astounding. She could even create and freely manipulate constructs like thunder beasts and lightning dragons. It was simply unbelievable. Among the spectators, a high-ranking fallen angel with 10 black wings, Barrakiel, stared at Akeno, his eyes wide with disbelief. Beside him, the Governor-General of the Fallen Angels, Azazel, was equally surprised. Barrakiel, isn't that girl your daughter? I thought she only inherited your lightning powers. How does she also have strong ice powers? Barrakiel was speechless. How should I know? You know how our relationship is, don't you? Back in the Occult Research Club, Sona was also stunned by Akeno's power. As Rias's best friend and rival, she was familiar with Rias's peerage, though perhaps not intimately. But she knew that Akeno shouldn't possess such power. Akeno's mastery over lightning was already beyond Sona's abilities, and her own water-based magic would be completely suppressed by Akeno's lightning. Now, with the addition of such potent ice magic, Sona would be utterly outmatched. That ice magic of Akeno's is your doing, isn't it? Sona thought, a little dazed. She turned to look at Kyoya, who was still resting on her lap, and couldn't help but feel a surge of jealousy. Just what did you do to them, Kyoya? Sona wondered aloud. Back in the alternate dimension, Rias and Riser were facing each other, but now Rias was backed by her full peerage. Rias, what the hell did you feed your peerage in those 7 days? Riser said, his expression dark, his tone filled with disbelief. His 15 peerage members had been defeated by Rias's 5 in just a few minutes. What was even more unacceptable was that Rias's peerage members hadn't even suffered any injuries. It was a complete humiliation. I told you, I'm going to defeat you and make everyone acknowledge our separation. Rias said, her arms crossed, a slight smirk playing on her lips. And I won't bully you with numbers. My peerage members won't interfere in our fight. This is between you and me. Damn it, Rias. What are you trying to say? Are you looking down on me? Riser roared, enraged by Rias's words. I'm not looking down on you. I'm only stating my confidence in my own abilities. Rias said, her expression calm. Akeno, everyone, step back. I want to end this once and for all. Understood. The four nodded and quickly retreated, leaving Rias and Riser alone. The spectators watching the live broadcast were confused. Was this going to be a one-on-one fight? They felt Rias was being conceited. Sure, 5 against 1 would have guaranteed victory. But one-on-one? Against a member of the Phoenix family? Isn't that just pushing your luck? Everyone knew that members of the Phoenix family were practically immortal, capable of reviving themselves from even the most grievous injuries. That's why they had never lost. Then don't blame me for what happens next, Riser said, his body erupting in Phoenix flames. He charged at Rias. Rias responded in kind, her power of destruction surging around her, her aura unmistakably surpassing that of a high class. Everyone watching realized that Rias had reached the peak of high-class level. In the next instant, Rias unleashed her ultimate attack, Extinguished Star. A massive sphere of crimson destructive energy pierced Riser's body, extinguishing his phoenix flames. Everyone watching was stunned into silence. They couldn't believe that Rias had developed her family's power of destruction to such a horrifying degree, instantly taking one of Riser's lives. Even gods, Satans, and other powerful beings who had experienced countless battles found their hearts palpitating at the sight of Rias's destruction. Such young devil reaching the peak of high-class level was incredibly rare. But then, Riser revived in a blaze of phoenix fire, completely unharmed. Ha, Rias, even if your power of destruction is strong, how many times can you use that attack? You can't defeat me. Riser laughed arrogantly. Is that so? I was planning on killing you a few more times, but it seems like a waste of time. So, let's just end this now with my final trump card. A trump card? Rias, are you still trying to bluff your way out of this? Riser scoffed. Before Riser could finish, a giant blue, draconic figure suddenly appeared, its eyes locked onto him with an icy glare. The scary aura it emanated was unmistakably that of a Mao-class being. What? That's a dragon at the heavenly dragon level. In an instant, all the spectators were stunned, staring at the unfamiliar ice-blue dragon with a mixture of shock and disbelief. Even the two heavenly dragons and their hosts watched with excitement and curiosity. I've never seen or heard of this dragon before, but its aura is at the heavenly dragon level. What a surprise! Albion said, astonished. Yes, indeed. Lux, keep your excitement in check. Even if you use your boosted gear, you might not be able to defeat this unknown dragon. Drake warned his host, recognizing the dragon's power. Hibari Kyoya, he really is full of surprises. I bet that dragon is his doing, Vala said with a smile, speaking to himself. And then, something even more shocking happened. Rias raised her hand, and a holy light gathered within it, forming a mystical holy sword. All the spectators watching the match felt like they were dreaming. Wait a minute. A devil wielding a holy sword? Even Surzex felt his scalp tingle, and the gods in the audience felt a strange familiarity with the holy sword. Chapter 55 Rayquaza attacks the referee. What the hell? Isn't that the legendary Excalibur? How did it suddenly appear here, in the hands of a pure-blood devil? Riser was so shocked that he was trembling, and he gasped in disbelief. That's a holy sword? How can you wield a holy sword? Although Riser was too shocked to immediately identify it as Excalibur, he could clearly sense the terrifying power emanating from a blade. Among all weapons, those imbued with holy power, holy water, were the most effective against devils. Holy swords, in particular, were a devil's worst nightmare. A scratch from a holy sword could inflict a grievous wound on a devil, one that was incredibly difficult to heal. A direct hit or impalement could be fatal unless the devil was exceptionally powerful. But now, Rias was wielding a holy sword. Unless she had received a blessing from the angels of heaven, such a thing should be impossible. But the seraphim and angels of heaven were even more bewildered than Riser. Rias, as a devil, was their sworn enemy. There was no way they would help her. Even more perplexing to the angels was why Excalibur, a weapon made from the faith of humanity, would choose a devil as its wielder. Unlike the ignorant masses, Surzex, who had more knowledge on the matter, understood that the legendary sword of the planet was fundamentally different from the holy swords forged in heaven. Rias could never be the wielder of Excalibur. A holy sword would never choose a devil. So, there's only one possibility. In an instant, Surzex thought of Hibari Kyoya. Surzex's eyes shone brightly, and he was thrilled. It's that human Hibari Kyoya. He must be the true wielder of Sword of Promised Victory. And it wasn't just Surzex who had figured it out. Chow Chow of the hero faction, Valley, and Lux, among others, had also deduced Kyoya's connection to the sword. But the uninformed devils watching the match were utterly terrified, not understanding what was going on. How can Rias wield a holy sword? We're afraid of them, but she can just use one? What the hell is happening? On the battlefield, Riser was trembling uncontrollably, his body instinctively shifting into his phoenix form. Even so, he still felt a chill run down his spine. Riser felt the threat of death looming over him, making him shudder uncontrollably. He wanted to escape, but fear rooted him to the spot. Just then, the holy sword in Rias's hand flared with a blinding light. She had clearly finished charging her attack, and a terrifying beam of energy was about to be unleashed on Riser. As if foreseeing his own death, Riser screamed at the top of his lungs, "Stop! I surrender!" The moment Riser surrendered, Evelyn, as the referee, quickly intervened to stop Rias's attack. Rias, hearing Riser surrender, quickly changed the direction of the Holy Sword's attack. Suddenly, the Holy Sword released an intense flash of light, like a beam of pure annihilation, that engulfed a distant city, obliterating everything in its path. Riser stared at the scene in horror, unable to believe his eyes. He slumped to the ground, paralyzed by fear, knowing he had just escaped death's grasp. But as fate would have it, an accident occurred at that very moment. Kyom quickly shouted, "Bucho, run! Rayquaza's attack can't be stopped. It's coming." Everyone looked up at Rayquaza, stunned. They thought the danger had passed. Who knew this dragon still had an attack brewing? Rayquaza thought to itself, "I've been watching here for so long. and you still won't let me attack. Now I can't stop even if I wanted to. Here, have a taste of my spit. Seeing the terrifying scene, Evelyn quickly used all her power to create a magic barrier to protect Rias and Riser. Roar! A beam of blue energy erupted from Rayquaza's mouth. Dragon's Rage! As the meteor-like Dragon's Rage descended, everyone's jaws dropped. Boom! Rayquaza's Dragon's Rage collided with Evelyn's magic barrier. A blinding light erupted, followed by a shockwave that swept across the entire area. Riser, who was within the barrier, stared blankly at the scene, unable to utter a word. Just then, Evelyn, horrified, realized that her magic barrier was cracking under the strain. Oh no! In an instant, the magic barrier shattered, and the three of them were engulfed by the attack. Rias, Bucho, Oni-sama. Seeing the three engulfed by the attack, Akeno and the others, as well as Ravel, cried out in alarm. In the Occult Research Club, Kyoya also stood up abruptly. Crap, Rayquaza. Sona was also worried. Will they be alright? They should be fine. Rayquaza didn't use its full strength, and Evelyn is almost at the peak ultimate class. She should have been able to withstand the attack. I said after thinking for a moment. Soon, the blinding light faded. The scene finally calmed down. But when the spectators saw the state of Rias, Riser, and Evelyn, they were shocked. Rias and Riser were mostly unharmed, but Evelyn was in a terrible state. One of her arms was severely injured and covered in blood. What the hell? This rating game getting crazier by the minute. First, Rias's peerage crushed Riser's. Then, Rias, a devil, wielded a holy sword. And after Riser surrendered, this unknown dragon attacked, severely injuring even Evelyn, the queen of Mouse Surzex. It was all too much. It was completely challenging their ability to process what was happening. Rias, seeing Evelyn's injuries, quickly asked, "Sister-in-law, are you all right? Is it life-threatening?" Evelyn, still in shock from looking at Rayquaza, recovered upon hearing Rias's concern and replied, "Don't worry, Rias-sama. These injuries are manageable. I can heal them." Hearing Evelyn's words, Rias breathed a sigh of relief. In the audience seating area, Mouse Surzex also relaxed slightly, seeing that his wife wasn't in any serious danger. Meanwhile, Riser, having experienced the shadow of death several times now, had completely lost his composure. He screamed hysterically, "I surrender. I forfeit the engagement. Send me back. I don't want to stay here anymore. I declare this rating game to be Rias-sama's victory." Evelyn appeared before Riser, glanced at him in his terrified state, then announced the result of the rating game to Rias. Chapter 56, The Underworld in Shock, Rias and Kyoya's Engagement. After the announcement, Evelyn turned to the group. "Everyone, since the attacks from Lady Rias's holy sword and the dragon have weakened the integrity of this dimension, we must leave immediately." Understood. Hearing Evelyn's announcement, they quickly left the alternate dimension and returned to the Occult Research Club. When Rias and the others reappeared in the familiar room, they saw Kyoya, Sona, and the student council members all smiling at them. "Congratulations on annulling your engagement, Rias," Sona said, walking up to her. "Yes," Rias responded softly, then turned to Kyoya with a grateful smile. "Kyoya, thank you so much for your help. Without you, I wouldn't have been able to win this rating game." I grinned mischievously and said, "Well, Rias, I trust you haven't forgotten why I offered to help you in the first place, have you?" Meanwhile, in the underworld, the spectators watching the rating game were still reeling from the events that had just transpired. Even Surzex was stunned. After all, this rating game had been utterly unpredictable. In the Mao's palace, the devils were engaged in a lively discussion, while Surzex was pleased that his sister had won and dissolved the engagement. He was also looking forward to meeting Kyoya soon. Although Evelyn had told him that Hibari Kyoya was very strong, Surzex still hadn't believed that Rias and her peerage could defeat Riser in a head-on confrontation after only 7 days of training. But the truth had proven him wrong. Rias and her peerage had exceeded his expectations. Even more surprising was the fact that Kyoya was the true wielder of sort of promised victory. Then, Surzex turned to the current head of the Phoenix family, Riser's father, and asked, Lord Phoenix, what is your opinion now? Lord Phoenix sighed in resignation, then looked at Surzex. Your Majesty, my son is no match for Lady Rias. He brought shame upon our family. As such, I agree that the engagement should be dissolved. Surzex smiled and announced the outcome. In that case, the engagement between Rias Grimmery and Riser Phoenix is hereby annulled. They shall each go their separate ways from this day forward. Back in the Occult Research Club, after I hinted at my intentions, Rias blushed, but instead of avoiding the subject, she grabbed my hand and held it close. Eek! The girls present were surprised by Rias's bold move, and then annoyed that she had stolen a march on them. Luckily, Asia wasn't there, or there would have been another fight for my attention. Rias, you can't hog Kyoya all to yourself, Akeno said, her voice laced with a hint of jealousy. Akeno, Kyoya clearly stated that he's my boyfriend, so I'm the main wife. Rias retorted, holding my hand even tighter, her eyes challenging Akeno. My, didn't expect you to be so bold, Rias. But are you really sure Sona and the rest of the girls will let you have Kyoya all to yourself? Akeno said with a teasing smile. Seeing Akeno suddenly drag her into the conflict, Sona was speechless. Cough. Rias, even if you're my best friend, you can't just get all lovey-dovey with Kyoya in front of me like that. I'm not about to let you monopolize him so easily. After all, many of the student council members are already in a relationship with him. Sona adjusted her glasses and stated her position firmly. Hearing this, Rias was taken aback. She looked at Tomo and the other girls, who were all blushing and full of fighting spirit, and she felt a slight twitch in her mouth. But I'm still going to be the main wife. Rias complained to me. Well, Rias, that's not up to me. It depends on whether you can win them over, I said, feeling a headache coming on. Though I knew that having a harem would inevitably lead to competition among the girls, this was. But rest assured, I love all of you and won't let any of you down, I quickly added, reassuring the girls. Now that Kyoya has said that, I'm relieved, Akeno said with a smile. The other girls also blushed, including Tsubaki, who lowered her head in embarrassment. Rias and Sona exchanged a helpless smile. As for Kiba, well, he was just ignored, as usual. Soon after, Evelyn returned with Riser and his peerage. Rias, it's a bet, and I lost. Our families have called off the engagement. You're free now, Riser said, his expression complicated. Farewell. We should get going now. Riser was ready to leave. He didn't know how to face Rias. He had mocked and looked down on her, but now she had defeated him so easily, and he had acted like a coward during the fight. He couldn't bear to face her anymore. As the magic circle activated, Riser and his peerage disappeared from the Occult Research Club. However, Ravel, Riser's younger sister, kept looking at me with a shy expression. Not a complete loser, I suppose. At least he has some dignity. But he's obviously too embarrassed to face Rias after losing so badly. Akeno watched as Riser and his group left. Rias also felt sympathy and helplessness for Riser. Riser may have been strong due to his family, but that's all he had. This loss will probably be a huge blow to his confidence. Speaking of which, that Ravel Phoenix seemed quite interested in you. Don't tell me you're already planning something? Rias looked at Kyoya with a strange expression. I haven't done a thing to her yet, but if she decides to fall into my arms, that's hardly my fault, I said, shrugging nonchalantly. Just then, Evelyn interrupted the conversation. Lady Rias, Lord Surzex has asked that you and Mr. Abari come to House Gremery when you have time. Rias was surprised, then asked with some trepidation, Kyoya, what does Oni-sama want? Could it be that my family going to target Kyoya? Please rest easy, Lady Rias. Lord Surzex has already explained everything to your parents. The invitation is to discuss the matter of your marriage to Mr. Hibari. Now that concludes my duties here. I'll be taking my leave. With that, Evelyn bowed to the group and disappeared into a magic circle. Rias didn't speak immediately. Instead, Her face was flushed red, all the way to her ears. My marriage with Kyoya?